Introduction to JavaScript.
Welcome back. Crazy-eyed Bill is waiting with his pair of lucky dice, so it's time to get started. You'll see that I've defined a few more functions on the left side. We've got the play dice function, which is where lots of the main action will be happening. We've also got the roll die function. Now don't worry, die is just the singular for dice. There's no reason to feel a sense of foreboding yet. And there's lots of unfamiliar stuff in roll die, but you don't have to worry about most of it. I will link to some of the documentation for the math module if you really want to know. But what I want you to pay attention to is this return. Basically, at the end of the function, after it's executed everything, it will return whatever comes right after the return word, which means up here, Bill's first roll will get the results of roll die. I've made a simpler example of how this works with add. In add, we give it two numbers, and let's see what happens with them. You've got 2 and 3, which are now num1 and num2. It's going to return num1 plus num2. So, if we design this correctly, it should return 5. And we forgot to hit this button. That's very important. And if we try it again, we will see that it now returns 5. What happened before was that none of this had run, so that add was not defined yet. And after we ran it all, it was defined. Just like any value, the return from a function can be saved in a variable. For example, we could store the result of our add function in result. And you can see that result indeed has a value of 5 now. And that's exactly what we're doing with Bill's first roll. And we're doing the same thing with Bill's second roll. And even though the roll die, the same roll die function is called, we have a randomization function here so that it will return a different value each time. And here I've coursed it into giving us an integer between 1 and 6, just like a normal 6-sided die. Let's go ahead and walk through the rest of the function. Bill's total roll is what we get when we add up Bill's first roll and Bill's second roll. This is just a review of operators. So Bill's total roll will also be an integer, somewhere in between 2 and 12. Then, like last time, we have console.log printing out a string to the console. Then we have console.log printing out something which appears to be an integer instead of a string. It just so happens that JavaScript is smart, and if you give console.log an integer, it'll know how to transform it into a string. For example, if we roll the dice here, see that Bill's total roll is 4. Can you tell right there whether it's an integer or a string? You probably can't, but the computer can. And to the computer, that right there has been turned into a string. But that's a complication that you don't have to worry about too much for now. It's just something to keep in mind. Alright, and now Bill's playing dice. But you aren't yet. You need to challenge him. Go ahead, roll your dice here. You can do what we did here, just changing a few variable names, or you can do it any way you choose. But make sure that your total is printed out to the console. Happy playing!